All right, settle down, everyone. So, Family Guy Season 24, Episode 4. Let's just get this out of the way. This episode is an episode. And you know what that means, right? It means Seth MacFarlane, bless his heart, probably looked at a calendar, saw a bunch of dates open, and said, you know what would be funny? If we took a bunch of random thoughts, stuck them together, and called it a story. And bless his heart, he did it. Again. But hey, at least this time we got Tom Brady in the booth. That's got to count for something, right? Or does it? We're going to dive deep into this glorious mess, figure out what it's even trying to do, and see if there's anything worth salvaging. And trust me, there's a lot to unpack here, from questionable life choices to questionable furniture choices. So buckle up, Buttercups, because this is going to be a wild ride. And I'm pretty sure by the end, you'll understand why this episode has more plot holes than a Swiss cheese convention. Also, if you're not already subscribed, you're doing yourself a disservice. Seriously, what else are you going to do with your time? Watch paint dry? This is way more entertaining, I promise. Just hit that button, ding the bell, you know the drill. It's like the least amount of effort for the maximum amount of hilarious commentary. This episode, on the surface, is about Peter and the guys at the Clam, watching football and dealing with some truly terrible local ad breaks. Meanwhile, Stewie and Brian are wrestling with a crib that has seen better days, leading to a bizarre trip to IKEA. And then there's Meg, who somehow lands a date with Tom Brady. Yeah, you heard that right. Meg and Tom Brady. The show tries to tie these threads together with the overarching theme of, well, it's hard to say. Maybe it's about finding value in things, whether it's old furniture, old athletes, or old relationships. Or maybe it's just about the chaos that happens when you throw a bunch of random ideas into a blender. Honestly, it feels like two completely different episodes mashed together. One is a typical Family Guy outing with absurd situations and character-driven antics. The other is this weird attempt at social commentary, or maybe just an excuse to get Tom Brady on screen. The writing is inconsistent, to say the least. Some jokes land, some fall flatter than a pancake run over by a steamroller. The pacing is all over the place. You've got scenes that drag on forever, and then suddenly they're zipping through major plot points. Visually, it's Family Guy. It looks fine. The animation is, animation. Nothing groundbreaking, but nothing that actively detracts from the experience. My verdict? This is a pretty middle-of-the-road episode. It's not the worst thing they've ever done, but it's definitely not the best. It's got some funny moments, and the Tom Brady stuff is there. But it feels a little unfocused, a little too reliant on just throwing random things at the wall and seeing what sticks. It's an episode that exists, and that's about all I can say for sure. Now, let's get into the nitty-gritty of some of the moments that really stood out, for better or worse. So, the episode opens with that classic Family Guy theme song, right? The one that's basically been the same for, 20 years? It's like the show is reminding us, hey, remember the good old days? Remember when we weren't this weird? And then we're at the Clam. Classic setting. Peter, Quagmire, Joe, Cleveland, all just hanging out, watching football. But the immediate thing that hits you is the sound design, or lack thereof. You've got this national ad for the Chevy Blazer, and then suddenly this completely distorted local ad for some car dealership. It's jarring, and honestly, it's kind of genius in its own way. It perfectly encapsulates the feeling of living in a small town where things just don't quite line up. It's like the universe is yelling at you, hey, pay attention, this is important. And then they cut to the Patriots losing badly. Peter's immediate reaction to hating that people in Denver are happy is classic. He can't stand that someone else is having a good time when he's miserable. It's the pettiest, most relatable thing about him. And the commentary on time zones? Spot on. He knows his zones. The fact that Tom Brady is doing commentary now is also a big deal. And the idea of going to see him is immediately shut down by the traffic on Route 1, which, of course, leads right back to the distorted car dealership ad. It's a neat little loop. The real meat of the episode, though, kicks off with Stewie and Brian. Stewie wants a treat, Brian doesn't have one, and they need to move a mattress. This is where things get weird. Rupert is stuck. Okay, standard Stewie-esque problem. But then you find out Rupert is handcuffed to the crib. And there's a built-in ashtray. A built-in ashtray. This is where the writers really lean into the how old is this furniture gag. The idea that the furniture is so old and so messed up that it has an ashtray built into a baby crib. And then the reveal. It's hand-me-downs for Meg and Chris, and even Peter and Lois before them. The joke about parents smoking while putting the baby down for a nap, or the baby smoking while parents were at work. It's dark, it's gross, and it's exactly the kind of humor Family Guy thrives on. Stewie's reaction, ugh, I deserve better than this white trash furniture, is perfect Stewie. He's so melodramatic and class-conscious, even when he's dealing with a potentially life-threatening situation for Rupert. This leads them to IKEA. And the description of IKEA, a furniture store where people go to eat meatballs and argue with their wives, that is surprisingly accurate for a lot of people. The song they sing about the home of the brave, and then the whole flyover bit, which is just bizarre. The straining note, the gasp, the microphone feedback, the sudden cheering, it's so random, it's almost brilliant. And then the line, "Greatest country in the world, right?" Followed by, "I'm gonna hold eye contact till you respond." It's a perfect encapsulation of performative patriotism. Then we shift gears to Meg. And of course, she's working at the Clam, serving clam chowder. Her explanation for why she's there is incredibly long-winded, and Peter's reaction, "Shorter, shorter story, Meg," is gold. It's a running gag, and it's used perfectly here. Meg gets the job because she applied and got it. That's it. And then the joke about creamy clam squirt and Quagmire's giggity. It's crude, it's Family Guy. The bombshell drops. Tom Brady is at the Clam. Meg is suddenly obsessed. Brian's line about refilling his clam vat is just a choice. But Meg's desperation to get in there to meet him is palpable. Her claim of being Eddie Murphy's late-night pizza and prostitute guy is a hilarious, absurd boast. And then Peter gets the call for more pizza, and the ambiguity of whether he means pizza or prostitutes. It's a classic Family Guy non sequitur. The IKEA scene escalates quickly. Stewie's observation about stepfamilies furnishing their lesser houses after divorce is a surprisingly sharp jab at modern family structures and consumerism. The description of the furniture as not worth fighting over is darkly funny, and the Coke softball bed being on backorder for 6 to 8 weeks, that's the IKEA promise, and it feels like a threat. Stewie's line sounds like more of a threat, and Brian's response, I think it sort of walks the line nicely between the two, is a perfect meta-commentary on the store itself. And then the assembly required. All. Ouch. Stewie's line, "That's fine, I'm quitting soon anyway," is a funny moment of resignation. But then Stewie gets his big idea, living in IKEA. We could have a different living room every night and a different kitchen every morning. And then the elevated dog bowls for Brian. I won't have to lower my face to the floor like some scumbag cat. That's a brilliant justification for a ridiculous plan. Brian, of course, is in. They become IKEA residents. Meanwhile, back at the Clam, we see the crowd cheering, the game ending. Then Peter and Lois show up, claiming to be the family of the people murdered by Aaron Hernandez, wanting a signed football. It's a dark joke, but it's played for absurdity. And then they actually meet Tom Brady. Peter's questions about time zones are hilariously random. Their drunken ramblings, the burp nervousness, it's all just pure chaos. Brady's response to Peter's question about his forearms, "No, but I do take a Popeye class at Equinox." It's a great callback to a very specific niche reference. Brady's offer to take Meg out for coffee is the setup for their date. And Lois's comparison of Meg to the Little Shop of Horrors plant is wonderfully twisted. The joke about having a son she can be proud of if Meg marries Tom Brady, that's classic Family Guy's messed up family dynamics. Then we're back to the tattoo parlor. The joke about tattooing whore on her chest to get back at her dad, and the subsequent joke about tattooing pictures of Chris on fat people's ankles. It's a dark, meta joke about the show itself. Peter's continued obsession with fish for breakfast and lunch is a funny character detail. His plan to pretend write on one of the cardboard computers in one of the fake dens is a great visual. Meg and Tom Brady's conversation at Dunkin' Donuts is surprisingly normal, until Meg's brother reveals his nearly deaf brother thinks Brady is Benedict Arnold. It's a hilarious, specific grievance. Brady's response, "New England will always be home to me, is what I've been told to say," is a funny, canned answer. Meg trying to smooth talk him about football knowledge is endearing, and Brady's comment, "I'm a woman in New England. I'm required to watch football, but forbidden to speak during it," is a sharp observation about gender rules in certain places. Brady's idea to have Meg in his earpiece is the climax of their interaction. Meanwhile, Peter and Lois are back at IKEA, arguing about sofas and bed folding and a Yelp review about a dickish baby. The joke about IKEA expecting them to Yelp is funny.
Then Brady's keys to the game are defense, 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 followed by complimenting his tie. It's a solid piece of sports commentary parody. The cameo from Joel McHale trying to catch a ferret for animal control is a fun, unexpected bit. Stewie and Brian are living the dream in IKEA, calling dibs on top bunks and throwing a dinner party. Stewie's desire to ingratiate myself to the movers and shakers of Quahog leads to a joke about Quahog having more movers than shakers. Meg's rush to the bathroom due to her period, calling it a crime scene, is a gross but funny gag. Brady's final conversation with his announcer buddy, where he admits Meg isn't hot but he's hanging out with her for her football knowledge, is a gut punch and a classic Family Guy twist. And the episode ends with Stewie and Brian seemingly content in their IKEA life, living the dream. It's a strangely peaceful ending for them. The pacing of the episode is definitely one of its weakest points. You have these disconnected storylines bouncing around, and sometimes they feel like they're just waiting for the next big joke, rather than actually building a cohesive narrative. Like the whole Tom Brady plotline, it feels tacked on. Meg meeting him, them having coffee, him asking her to help him announce, it all feels a little too convenient and not really earned. The jokes themselves are a mixed bag. Some of them are classic Family Guy, hitting that sweet spot of offensive and hilarious. Others feel a little tired, like they're just rehashing old gags. The IKEA storyline, though, is where I think the writers were at their best. Stewie and Brian's absurdity, their ability to turn a mundane trip to a furniture store into an existential crisis and then a lifestyle choice, is classic. The visual of them living in IKEA is just inherently funny. The character he check here is interesting. Peter is Peter. He's the id of the show, constantly driving the plot with his stupidity and selfish desires. In this episode, he's mostly a catalyst for chaos, particularly with the IKEA plotline and the Tom Brady interaction. He's not really given much to do beyond being his usual buffoonish self. Brian, on the other hand, is kind of along for the ride. He's the voice of reason, or at least the slightly less idiotic one, but he gets swept up in Stewie's schemes. His justification for living in IKEA, the elevated dog bowls, is perfectly Brian, looking for any way to elevate his status. Stewie, as always, is the mastermind. He's the one driving the IKEA plot, and his pronouncements about white trash furniture and his desire for a better life are classic Stewie. He's the engine of that storyline. Meg, poor Meg, she's given the Tom Brady storyline, which is inherently absurd, and her reaction to him is her typical awkward self. She's desperate for validation, and getting to hang out with Tom Brady is her ultimate dream. Her performance here is exactly what you'd expect from Meg, a mix of eagerness, awkwardness, and a touch of desperation. Tom Brady himself is played surprisingly straight for most of it, which makes the interactions funnier. He's the celebrity who's slightly bewildered by the chaos around him. His final comments about Meg not being hot are a classic Family Guy gut punch to a character who desperately wants to be seen. Joe and Quagmire are mostly background characters, delivering their usual crude jokes. Lois is there. She's the voice of reason, trying to rein in Peter's nonsense, but mostly gets ignored. Her Little Shop of Horrors comparison is a great callback for those who remember it. The hidden gems in this episode are subtle, but they're there. First, the distorted local ad for Cerrone's Auto Barn. It's not just a random joke. It's a perfect illustration of the show's love for poking fun at mundane, often irritating aspects of everyday life. The fact that it's repeated and tied back into the narrative, with Peter and Lois mentioning Route 1 traffic, shows a level of craft that you might miss if you're just looking for the big laughs. It's a small detail that adds to the overall atmosphere of chaotic normalcy. Second, the mention of Popeye class at Equinox. This isn't just a random celebrity fitness joke. Equinox is a high-end, often pretentious gym. Pairing that with Popeye, a cartoon character known for his spinach-fueled strength, creates a funny juxtaposition. It's a joke that's layered. It mocks the absurdity of celebrity fitness trends while also referencing a classic cartoon. You might miss it if you're not familiar with the gym or the context, but it's a smart little jab. Third, Stewie's comment about Quahog having a lot of movers but only one shaker. This is a bit of wordplay that plays on the common phrase movers and shakers. It's a quick, clever pun that most people would probably skim over, assuming it's just another Stewie observation, but it shows a linguistic playfulness that's often present in the writing. Fourth, the Yelp review mentioned by Lois about a dickish baby. The fact that people are yelping furniture stores and reviewing specific babies suggests a level of absurd consumerism and online obsession that's very on the nose for modern society. It's a detail that grounds the otherwise fantastical IKEA plot in a bizarrely realistic way. Fifth, the mention of Aaron Hernandez. This is a pretty dark reference, obviously, given his history. The joke about Peter and Lois being the family of the people murdered by him is a classic Family Guy move, taking a real-world tragedy and twisting it for comedic effect. Most viewers would probably just register the name and move on, but it's a deliberate choice that adds a layer of edgy humor to their otherwise nonsensical antics. Now, what if they did it differently? Let's take that Tom Brady date.
Original choice, Meg gets the date, it's awkward, and then Brady reveals she's not hot and he's only interested in her football knowledge. My alternative, instead of it being a date, what if Meg, through some convoluted means, becomes Brady's assistant for the announcing gig? This allows for more of her football knowledge to be showcased, and maybe she actually proves useful. The humor could come from her trying to navigate the professional world and Brady being genuinely impressed, only to have Peter, Lois, or even Stewie interfere and mess it all up. It would give Meg a bit more agency and allow for funnier interactions than just a socially awkward coffee date. Second, the IKEA storyline. Original choice, Stewie and Brian decide to live there, turning it into their personal mansion. My alternative, what if the IKEA adventure was a one-off that resulted in them finding something genuinely useful and heartwarming? Like, instead of just deciding to live there, they discover a lost child or a forgotten family heirloom hidden within the store, and their adventure becomes about reuniting them. It would still have the comedic elements of them navigating the store, but it would add a layer of emotional resonance that the current ending lacks. It would make their time there feel less like a selfish whim and more like an actual, albeit bizarre, good deed. Third, the whole ripped-out theme song and jingle at the beginning. Original choice, play the full theme song, then the distorted local ad. My alternative, what if the opening sequence was even more chaotic? Imagine the theme song starts, but then it gets interrupted by the distorted ad during the song, and then the animation glitches out, showing brief flashes of the episode's plot points before snapping back to normal. It would set a tone of immediate instability and weirdness, and immediately tell the audience that this episode isn't going to play by the usual rules. It would feel more intentional than just a technical glitch. So, the verdict. I'm giving this episode a 6.2 out of 10. It's not a disaster, but it's far from a triumph. The 2.2 comes from the Cerrone's Autobarn ad and the built-in ashtray. Those were genuinely funny moments that showcased the show's unique brand of absurdity. The 6 is for the overall execution. It had potential, especially with the IKEA storyline, but it felt like it was held back by a lack of focus and some tired jokes. This episode is really for the hardcore Family Guy fans, the ones who will watch anything the show puts out and appreciate the callbacks and the familiar characters. New viewers would probably be pretty confused, and even some longtime fans might find it a bit underwhelming. What would have pushed the score higher? A tighter narrative. If the storylines had connected more meaningfully, or if one of the plots had been developed further, it would have felt more complete. As it stands, it's just a collection of disparate moments. And speaking of disparate moments, remember that incredibly awkward, distorted local ad at the beginning? Well, that feeling of things just not quite lining up, of a chaotic, slightly off-kilter reality, is exactly what this episode delivered. It's like they took that ad and stretched it out for 40 minutes, and while sometimes it was funny, sometimes it just felt like too much. Just like that car dealership's questionable audio.